When my father passed away, he didn't leave me a mansion, a savings account, or a list of possessions to divide. He left me a watch, a gold Rolex with a leather strap softened by years of use. I used to remember it resting against his wrist while he fixed old radios in the garage or sat beside me during school projects. To anyone else, it looked like a valuable watch. To me, it felt like time itself. For 6 months, I kept it untouched in my dresser drawer, not because I forgot about it, but because some things are too important to hold every day. Some things become anchors, proof that the people we love were really here. Then one morning, it was gone. I searched everywhere. Drawers, closets, under the bed. Nothing. My heart already knew where to look before my mind admitted it. I walked into the kitchen. Mom sat at the table stirring tea as if the morning were perfectly ordinary. "Have you seen Dad's watch?" I asked. She barely looked up. "Oh, that?" she said casually. "We sold it." I stared. "We?" She shrugged. "Your stepbrother needed startup money. It was just sitting there." The words landed slowly. It wasn't just sitting there. She sighed as though I was overreacting. "Sweetheart, your father is gone. What use is a watch now?" But she didn't understand. The watch was never about money. It was memory. And memories aren't supposed to have price tags. That afternoon, I drove straight to the pawn shop. I didn't even know what I expected. Maybe I wanted to buy it back. Maybe I only wanted to see it one more time. But the owner looked nervous the moment I walked in. "You're Georgia?" he asked. I nodded. Without a word, he reached under the counter and placed the Rolex in front of me. Untouched. My chest tightened. Then he said something I'll never forget. "There's something inside you need to see." Inside? Carefully, he removed the back of the watch. Instead of gears and movement parts, there was a folded piece of paper. Yellowed, small, hidden. I unfolded it carefully. One sentence. "If they find this before you do, trust no one." Signed, Dad. The room suddenly felt smaller. I read it again and again, because my father wasn't dramatic. He wasn't secretive. He was careful, precise, the kind of man who planned things quietly, which meant if he left this message, there was a reason. That night, I drove to a storage unit I'd rented after his passing. Inside were boxes of his old notebooks, tools, and files I'd never had the strength to open. Hours passed. Dust coated my hands. Then I found it, a worn leather planner. Inside were strange notes, coordinates, and handwritten reminders. At first, they looked random until I reached the last page. My name, Georgia, and underneath, "The day will come when you feel alone, but you'll be ready." I stared at the words. For the first time since losing him, I felt like Dad was still talking to me, still guiding me, not protecting me from hardship, preparing me for it. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it. A voicemail arrived seconds later. A man's voice. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." I froze. I hadn't told anyone, not friends, not family, no one. So how did someone know? I looked down at the watch, then whispered softly, "Okay, Dad." And for the first time, I stopped asking why. I started asking what next. Coordinates from Dad's planner led me to an old train depot outside town. I remembered visiting once as a child. Back then, he called it his quiet place. Now I understood. Inside, hidden behind a loose brick, I found a small safe. The code. Numbers engraved on the back of the watch. Inside sat another note and a flash drive. The note said, "If you're here, keep moving forward." Simple. Exactly like him. Later that night, I opened the drive. What I found wasn't treasure. It was truth, old financial records, estate paperwork, Documents showing irregular transactions connected to family finances. Pieces of a story I'd never seen before. Nothing dramatic, nothing explosive. Just enough to show me one thing. Dad had known life would eventually ask difficult questions, and he wanted me prepared to answer them. Suddenly, something became clear. The greatest thing he left behind wasn't money, it wasn't property, it wasn't even the Rolex, it was wisdom. Because hidden between papers and notes was a message repeated over and over in different forms. Pay attention, trust yourself, protect your future. Over the following weeks, I stopped chasing anger. I stopped trying to win arguments no one wanted to have. Instead, I focused on understanding what Dad had truly given me. I found his workshop behind a small church on the edge of town. Dust covered everything. His tools still hung where he'd left them. His jacket still rested on a hook. I stood there quietly, and for the first time since the funeral, I cried. Not because I was sad, because I finally understood. Dad wasn't trying to leave me things. He was trying to leave me strength. Hidden inside a drawer, I found one final letter. My hands shook opening it. Inside it read, "If you're reading this, you passed the test. Don't let love become your leash. Don't let forgiveness erase your boundaries. You aren't here to carry everyone else's weight. You're here to build." Signed, Dad. I pressed the letter against my chest, and I smiled through tears, because suddenly I could hear his voice, not in words, in lessons. Months later, I made a decision. I reopened his workshop, not as a repair shop, as something bigger, a community space, a place where people could learn financial literacy, understand inheritance rights, and rebuild confidence after being overlooked or dismissed. I called it Brooks and Time. Because time had been the first thing Dad ever gave me. People started showing up, students, single parents, young adults trying to figure out life, people carrying stories heavier than they looked. I didn't fix their lives. I just gave them space to remember they could fix parts of it themselves. And slowly, something beautiful happened. Healing spread. Not loudly, quietly, like sunrise. A month later, I visited Dad's grave. I placed a watch beside the stone, not the Rolex, a new one, simple, clean, timeless. Alongside it, I left a note. "You were right. I was ready." I stood there for a while beneath the morning sky, breathing, smiling, because people sometimes think inheritance means money, or houses, or possessions. But sometimes the greatest inheritance is being given the tools to stand back up after life knocks you down. Dad gave me that. And the girl who thought she'd been left with nothing, she discovered she'd been left with everything she needed all along.